What's up, everyone? Welcome to Mets Off Day Live. I'm your host, Chelsea Sherrod, and today I'm so happy to be joined by Mets radio broadcaster Keith Raad and Newsday columnist David Lennon. All right, guys, let's get right into it. The Mets are finishing up the All-Star break and heading into the second half of the season. David, you were at the All-Star game. What did you think? How was your experience there?
I was, yeah. I just got back yesterday afternoon. The All-Star games, I should say, between Home Run Derby, Futures Game. It's a whole kind of 5-day extravaganza. It's great. I mean, it's a great celebration of baseball. It's fun to be at. It's great to get a look at some of the next up-and-coming prospects in the Futures games on Saturday. Obviously, I got to see Jonah Tong out there. So, and for the game itself, I don't think we could have asked for more entertainment value, that's for sure. For as people that decided to stay up and make it to the quote-unquote swing-off tiebreaker, that turned out to be a lot of fun. Pete Alonso, I think, got bumped from the MVP for that after Pete hit the 3-run homer earlier in the game, which was a huge moment for him and for Mets fans, obviously. But really, I think that we've come away from the All-Star game many, many times kind of just feeling like it's a bit of a buzzkill and doesn't really live up to the hype. And I think this year it really delivered, for people who needed their baseball fix during these, 4 days off. I think they got it Tuesday night. A little sleepier on Wednesday morning at work, but they certainly got it Tuesday night.
Yeah, I mean, viewership-wise, it definitely delivered. Let's talk a little bit more about the swing-off. So Pete Alonso hit a 3-run homer in the 6th inning of the All-Star game, but unfortunately for the fans, he didn't get the chance to compete in the extra innings home run derby swing-off. Kyle Schwarber went 3 for 3 in the swing-off, giving the win for the NL. After the AL couldn't match his performance, Schwarber also took home All-Star game MVP despite going 0 for 2 in the actual game. So David just talked about it, but Keith, was Pete robbed of the All-Star game MVP?
I mean, yeah, maybe a little bit with his big moment. I think if the NL just flat out won the game and didn't blow it late, then it would have been Pete's award to win. And I think we were all bummed to see when we saw Pete's name. Okay, Pete's going to hit last in this home run showdown thing at the end. It's his MVP to lose, basically. But Kyle Schwarber's an absolute animal. But yeah, I mean, a little bit. I don't think Pete's upset about it. I know Mets fans are probably upset about it. He was happy to get a home run of the All-Star game. But it was an exciting finish. I mean, to the game, it was. Otherwise, there were moments where it was kind of dull, for lack of a better phrase. But for Pete to not have a home run derby, that was quite a moment for him. But yeah, maybe a little snub, maybe.
Okay, just a little bit. When the swing-off was created, the rules originally stated the MVP award would be based solely on the 9-inning game with the derby performance excluded. However, that rule was eliminated. David, when that rule was eliminated, was it fair to get rid of it to honor Schwarber's performance? What do you think?
There's some dispute about that because I've gone back and tried to trace the origin of whether or not this was a real thing. And people inside MLB say no, that was never something that was a definitive thing I think it was initially reported as something that was involved with it, but whether it was flexible, whether it wasn't originally in there, the bottom line is it's the All-Star game. It's an exhibition. They kind of can change things as they go along if that became the case. They cast a wide net as far as voters go. They poll rights holders, some members of the media. I wasn't among the voting bloc. They also poll fans on it to come up with an MVP. So, listen, I thought we were going to get the perfect storyline as a columnist that was at the game. As soon as we saw Pete was going to be involved in the swing-off and he was in the batting cage, warming up, it was like you couldn't write the script any better. Here was Pete, who skipped the home run derby this year for rest and wanted to have a big second half. Now the home run derby is going to find him again in something called the swing-off to decide this. And we were all stunned when Schwarber came up with the monster performance that he did, not because it was Schwarber, but because we just thought the baseball gods were going to have Pete come up and decide this. And at that point, really iced the MVP. But as far as the rules that went into this, with an MVP of an exhibition game, things can tend to get fuzzy. And whether or not this was changed, whether it was ironclad in the books, I still haven't been able to get to the bottom of it despite talking to people about it. So as we've learned, I think it was flexible, and they decided to have a vote, and the vote decided on Schwarber, which is hard to argue. I talked to Pete after the game, not about that specifically, but I said, how did hitting a home run in the All-Star game rate to hitting one in the home run derby? And he said, oh, it doesn't even compare. I mean, when you're up there, I'm hitting against competitive pitches. Somebody's not up there grooving me meatballs. And I was like, I wonder if that was a statement about something else. He didn't say that, but I couldn't help but kind of make the connection in my own head. Again, he didn't say that specifically regarding this game itself, but the thought was in my head afterwards.
Meatballs is hilarious. I'm going to have to use that moving forward. Let's switch gears, guys, to the trade deadline. As the Mets head into the second half of the season, they sit at 55-42 and a half game behind the Phillies for first place in the division. Keith, what are the Mets' biggest needs heading into the trade deadline?
Yeah, so my list, I think a starting pitcher has got to be on there. I know that bullpen is important, and there's no doubt about that, but there's just so many question marks for watching this team every single day, starting pitching-wise. And then bullpen would be second on the list, at least two relievers. One of them has got to be a lefty. The Mets are starving for a lefty reliever. They have Brooks Raley coming, but starting for that. And then if I were to have a third wish list for the trade deadline for the Mets, it's a center fielder, maybe even just a bat that can produce from either side of the plate as a DH. I mean, the Jesse Winker injury hurts. Starling Marte going down hurts a little bit, but the Mets could use a little thump, preferably left-handed. So those are my three wish list items for the next 2 weeks here.
Okay, and David, should David Stearns and the Mets be going all in, or do you think that they should be adding small pieces and working with the roster that they currently have?
Well, from the signals they've sent us during the offseason, and certainly Steve Cohen's motivation for this year is to win a World Series. I mean, after losing in the NLCS last year and coming much closer than we probably would have anticipated, you don't go out and get somebody like Juan Soto and not have aspirations of winning it all. So I think when it gets to midseason, this is certainly an all-in team. There's a lot of definitions of a lot of definitions of all in. I mean, how deep do you go into your farm system to make it happen? Keith certainly supplied a pretty comprehensive list of guys they should, or positions they should seek out. And he's right. I mean, those are all, big areas of needs. Funny how it is at this time of year. Those are probably the three same needs of about a dozen other teams. So the competition is going to be pretty steep to do that. And I think with David Stearns, he's going to be walking a fine line here because he's always been used to being with teams that have been fairly protective of their minor league system and really with the look to the future and not wanting to trade away too much of that or go too deep into that. So I think that's kind of the conflict in his own mind on the way that he goes about building winning teams. So, and on the other hand, you're going to have Steve, who's like, well, I've already put $330 million into this team. I'd like to get a World Series this year or as quickly as possible. So that's a little bit of the conflict here. And again, I think another thing, it doesn't weigh over David Stearns' head, but I think as a cautionary tale, it just so happens this year that Pete Crow Armstrong, former Mets minor leaguer, has turned into an MVP candidate. And again, does it influence somebody like David Stearns, or is it more of a cautionary tale throughout the league who think about that? And are we trading the next Pete Crow Armstrong for an immediate bump here? That's something GMs are always a little twitchy about. Are we trading the right guy? Are we trading a guy who's going to come back to haunt us? And I think Pete Crow Armstrong has really been kind of the flashing neon billboard this year of what can maybe go wrong if you make that wrong choice.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously the way that this roster has been constructed from the jump, it's basically an October or bust season for the Mets. So next we'll go through some players who are rumored to be on the trade block. I'd like you both to tell us the latest you're hearing and the type of package required to acquire these players. So Keith, I'll start with you. Marlins right-hander, former NL Cy Young winner, Sandy Alcantara. What are you hearing about a potential acquisition of him?
Yeah, so first of all, Sandy is, like you said, a former Cy Young winner and an ace at his best in this league, but he has not been at his best at all this season. He has an ERA about 7.5. It pushes to 8 a little bit because he's coming off Tommy John. The Marlins are changing his usage a little bit, more breaking stuff, less heat, which is what Alcantara is known for, and so he's really struggled. And there hasn't really been that look that's, okay, this is Sandy. But I do know that a lot of teams just want to get their hands on him so that they can maybe bring him back to the Sandy of old. And so as far as a team like the Mets, it's dicey because it's going to be costly. The Mets, as you talked about or you both talked about with how much money they've spent, it's going to cost a lot more to have big guys in like Sandy Alcantara versus some other names on the list that are maybe arbitration eligible or major league minimum. Is that you're probably looking at about 2 or 3 prospects for a guy like Alcantara, because if he sticks around for 17 million or 20 million a year after that, or the next 2 years after that, that's less than what a free agent is going to get when they hit the open market. So that makes it juicy for a team like the Mets, but also the team on the other side that's going to say, okay, cough up some prospects with control. So even though Sandy's had an ugly year in some spots, I do think that there's teams that just need him to be good for a month or two toward the end of the season here.
Yeah, that's really good perspective, because I feel like a lot of Mets fans have mixed feelings about acquiring Alcantara based on the way his year has gone so far. David, Jarren Duran, a Red Sox outfielder, would the Red Sox be willing to trade him after winning their last 10 straight? I mean, he could be an offensive upgrade in the outfield for the Mets.
And that's a great point, Chelsea. I mean, where do the Red Sox actually sit on this? I mean, a team that just won 10 straight, they took so much heat for trading Rafael Devers back home and trading an MVP type player. Seems like that trade has worked out pretty well for them so far in reeling off 10 straight and getting right back in this AL East race. So Durant is a great target for the Mets, obviously not just for this year, but as a guy who signed through the 2028 season, you're really setting yourself up to have center field set with a young player that does a lot of things well. Left-handed bat, as we alluded to before, something they're looking for. Speed, athleticism, plus glove in center field. So they could really take care of any center field questions for quite a while after this. So obviously a very cost-efficient player, as he's still in that process, not reaching free agency until 28. So what the Red Sox are looking for is young pitching. Their prospect base right now, their top guys are all position players. We've heard a lot about them, the 3 they've already called up. So, and they can move around. They're very versatile. So they're going to be looking for arms straight up. And at the top of that list is going to be a guy like, Brandon Sprout, clearly Sprout. And I think he's a guy the Mets would be interested in seeing, possibly moved. Other guys like Jonah Tong, who I'm sure we'll talk about later on, might be a guy they want to hold a little bit tighter to the vest.
Yeah, just thinking about, though, like Duran in the outfield with Nimmo and Soto, I mean, that could potentially be the best outfield in baseball if they were to acquire him. Just thinking out loud.
Well, I mean,
Keith,
Duran is a guy that, I was just going to say, Duran finished 8th in the MVP voting last year. He's not having the same kind of year this year, but we know the potentials. We know the potentials there for sure. Sorry about that, Chelsea.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Very true. Great point. Keith, former Met Seth Lugo, we talk about, the Mets needing some arms. Do you think that there could be a reunion there?
It's funny. We were just in Kansas City right before the All-Star break, and Seth was chatting up with some old teammates. The funny thing is that the Royals are not out of it, so they're not in any position to ship away their good pitching. And seeing that team on the cusp, still looking up at teams like the Red Sox and the Rays and the wild card, considering from their shoes, pitching is their strong suit. Seth Lugo is one of their most reliable pieces, and so this is one of the issues that you get as a buyer at the deadline, looking around at some teams that, they're under 500. They're probably sellers, but with all the wild card opportunities that are out there, it would take a lot for them to give up. They're basically punting their season if they trade away Seth Lugo to the Mets, because, again, their starters, their bullpen is really, really good. They just made a move to trade for Adam Frazier from the Pirates to their offense, so they're buying right now, the Kansas City Royals. So Seth Lugo would be great. A reunion would be nice. But the Royals are going to get rid of him. That's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I do think, though, even with the, return of Montas, Minaya, Senga, it does kind of put into question how those guys will hold up in the second half, just based on the fact that they are coming off of injury. So maybe just bringing a guy in like Lugo for, a potential rental deal could help the Mets. To our next guy, David, Cedric Mullins, Orioles outfielder, could be a summer rental. He's a free agent after this season. What do you think?
Well, now we've moved into a different segment of the grocery store aisle here at Chelsea. We talked about 2 teams that are on the fringe of contention. The Orioles most definitely are not. So, I mean, they should basically hang a sign outside of Camden Yards. Everything must go. So Cedric Mullins is certainly on that list. He's not the player that he was. I think that's become clear. It hasn't been a great year for him, which is not great timing for the Orioles, who want to squeeze the most value for him. So, again, he's a rental. I think this is a guy who could be a classic change of scenery situation. I mean, Cedric Mullins is a guy that wants to be on a contending team, is going to be at his best on a contending team. And that's what the Orioles were before this year. And that's when you saw the best out of him. You know, his defensive metrics have slipped some in center field. He certainly hasn't had the offensive year that we're used to seeing out of him. Is that potential still there? Again, I think it's a classic change of scenery trade here. What you're looking at is giving up a lot less for somebody like Mullins as a rental and the kind of year that he's having. You know, he'll be an upgrade from what the Mets currently have in center field. Obviously, Taylor is not much of an offensive player. He's played a great defense for the Mets, clearly. He's had some big hits as well, but as a consistently day in and day out offensive player, it's not there. So it'd be a slight upgrade for sure if you can unlock what Cedric Mullins has been. We just haven't seen that from him this year.
Yeah, he could give the Mets a lefty hitting option too. Keith, Zach Gallen, Diamondbacks right-hander, pending free agent. Do you think that he could be a difference maker for the Mets?
Now we're talking. This is my guy right here, Chelsea. I like Zach Gallen a lot because I've seen him shove a lot against the Mets and against other teams over the last few years. I love a guy that is right there with dollar signs at the end of the season. I think it's a great incentive for these guys. If the Mets were to trade for him, if any buyer were to trade for him, you're going to get Zach Gallen saying, I'm about to put together a great last few months, maybe help a team go to the World Series, and then get paid afterwards. Those are the things that David Stearns likes to do with some of the free agent pitchers that he brings in. Go check Luis Severino's bank account after 1 year with the Mets. Sean Manaea did pretty well after 1 year with the Mets, kind of taking a chance. And so I like Zach Gallen a lot. I think he's filthy. You look at his numbers, I'm a little more upbeat on Gallen than I am on Alcantara, because even with Gallen's kind of up and down year, there are games that he just dominates. He has that ace-like ability. I'm going to throw in the East Coast thing because he's from South Jersey, the Philly area, so maybe there's a little tie in there to come back home from Arizona for a little while. But I'm a big Zach Gallen fan. It would take a lot. You know, they're kind of in that buy-sell mode. I think they're going to lean towards selling just because there's so many teams in the way, and they could kind of point and look at the Mets farm system and say, we need some young controllable pitchers. Maybe throw in a Sproat or a Tong or something like that. But yeah, it'll be costly because it's one and done, the rental. But I'm a big Zach Gallen fan for the Mets starting rotation.
Yeah, we saw you sit up a little straighter in your chair.
Yeah, there you go.
We're ready for that one. Up next, David, back to you. Pirates reliever David Bednar, two-time All-Star. He did struggle at the start of the year, was sent down to AAA. Since then, he's been a different guy. What do you think about a potential acquisition of him?
Yeah, Chelsea, you mentioned it. When this year began, he was the top of the list of people that would be moved at the deadline, one of the most sought-after relievers for his ability in the past. And then the bottom fell out at the end of the year. He was sent down. He was a disaster, and then nobody really talked about him. Well, they're talking about him now. He's back with huge swing and miss stuff again. He's back to the David Bednar that people had talked about before. So, yeah, he's going to be a huge reliever to be sought at the deadline right now. Has another year of control after this year, which is a big thing for him. Makes him that much more attractive to teams, not just teams making a run of it this year too. So that's going to make him more costly. Obviously, the Pirates in the driver's seat here, holding on to a player like that. They've gone back and forth. The owner has made noise about not wanting to trade him in the past because he has to give up, show the appearances of eventually trying to build something in Pittsburgh. Well, to build something in Pittsburgh, you're going to have to start taking out a shovel and some bricks and start building. And they haven't really done that so far. So I would expect him to move. I think there's just going to be too many suitors for him. And I think the Mets should really be after that. Again, really big swing and miss stuff for them, and that'd be a great addition to the bullpen.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Keith, back to you. Mitch Keller, Pirates right-hander. The Mets saw him on June 27th. He only allowed one run over 5 1/3 innings. What do you think about Keller?
It's funny. We're back at another guy where we go, who is this guy? Can we get him on our team? Because he keeps beating us every single time. That's the funny thing, that Griffin Canning had that same ability too, to just beat the Mets every time he pitched against them. But I like Keller for a couple different reasons. I've also heard the Cubs are involved. And the reason I say that I like Keller, Cubs, division rival with Pittsburgh. Are you really going to give Mitch Keller to the Cubs, who's going to beat you for the next 4 years? Keller is right now in year 2 of, I think, about a 5-year deal, $77 million, right in the midst of his prime. And for David Stearns, what makes this juicy again is what's the carrot at the end for Stearns is control, cheap starting pitching. I mean, Mitch Keller making anywhere from 15 to $20 million a year for the next few years. Great. I mean, that's better than going out and signing Zach Gallen at the end of this year for $27 to $30 million a year. So that would be great. And so you turn around and maybe you throw in some position players, because we just saw the Pirates, and even though the Mets had their worst series in franchise history, the Pirates do need some offensive help. And I think the Mets can provide that with some of their young offensive prospects, especially this year. They've had an amazing year down in the minor leagues as far as hitting and position players are concerned. So Keller's another good guy that I like. You just wonder what a player like that, what kind of stomach that they have for big games and big moments. Gallen has pitched in the World Series before. Mitch Keller's pitched in Pittsburgh. Not a lot of big moments in there. So he's pretty tantalizing as a trade piece.
That's a good point. Very valid point. David, Eugenio Suarez, Diamondbacks third baseman infielder, during the All-Star game, he told reporters that he wants to go to a team that wants to win. So could that be in play for the Mets?
Well, unfortunately for Suarez, he's not the guy making the phone calls right now. It's not a free agent along those lines. But yes, if he makes him feel any better, he'll be going to a team that wants to win, I'm sure, when he gets traded. There's no doubt about that. The other scary moment for him I shouldn't say another scary moment, but the scary moment for him was when he was hit on the hand in the All-Star game. Not something you want to happen right before the trade deadline. And it was serious enough to knock him out of the swing off. He had to be substituted there by Kyle Stowers. So, yeah, I mean, the thing with Suarez, the other team in town is going to be pretty interested in him too. The Yankees need a third baseman, and they've made noise that he's going to be the top of their list there. So, interesting case for the Mets. Suarez, huge power guy, obviously, very high strikeout rate too. So, for their lineup and what they've been trying to do, we've documented their runners in scoring position problems over and over and over again. Is a high strikeout guy, the kind of guy that should be a huge priority. Again, his power is gigantic, and he's going to hit home runs for sure for you. He already has a ton in the first half. That's very attractive. So I don't know where he would. I mean, I may sound crazy of not saying that's an all-out guy to get. He's just a rental too, but it's an interesting fit. Also, third base slipped a little bit defensively wise too. So going to take some thought there when you measure it up against other needs for them for sure.
Yeah, definitely. He is having a great year. Keith, last one for you. Edward Cabrera, Marlins right-hander, having a breakout campaign this season. What could that potentially look like, if anything?
Yeah, Cabrera, we've seen him a couple times. He's a really electric arm that does like to walk the ballpark, which I don't think fits well for playoff teams. You walk one guy and everyone wants to lose their mind in the playoffs. But with Cabrera, good young arm, cheap, controllable, right? I think he's making $1 million a year, and he's under that kind of major league minimum arbitration eligible salary for the next few years. But he's just been so hurt. So I don't know. I mean, if you do deal with the Marlins and Sandy Alcantara is the first name on the phone call, or you have other people that you're involved in. Remember, the Mets traded for Huascar Brosman out of the bullpen last year, somebody that no one else saw coming. Maybe Cabrera's part of that deal, but I wouldn't say he's a huge target. Go out and get him. But something you said earlier, Chelsea, about just the starting pitching market being so big for the Mets as a need is that, Clay Holmes has been kind of hitting a little bit of a wall, and Kodai Senga coming back, and you rely on him. So you need that ace-like guy, and that's why I think starting pitch is important. I don't know if Cabrera is that guy yet, but he could be part of a package.
Yeah, potentially. And just like you mentioned, Keith, the fact that he just avoided an IL stint right before the All-Star break, that's something that you have to keep in mind to potential injury in the future. Last one for you, David. Joe Ryan, Twins right-hander, made his All-Star game debut. What do you think of Ryan?
Yeah, it's a tough spot. I mean, of course, it'd be great to have. There's no way I'm going to say, Joe Ryan wouldn't be a great fit on the Mets team. And as Keith mentioned, starting pitching is certainly something they would like to add. But if you're the Twins, you're in a tough spot here. I mean, are you ready to wave the white flag in the division? I'm not quite sure they're at that point yet. When they come out of the break, their schedule is pretty easy. Things change fast. I mean, they're not catching the Tigers, obviously. But they're still in the wild card race. And do you want to trade with your all-star starting pitcher in Ryan to do that? I'm not so sure, especially because he's controllable. Again, another guy that's not going to be a free agent, I think, until 28. So the Twins are really going to have to be bowled over to consider that, just because he can certainly be a part of their future. and certainly helped them this year. So I don't know what you're going to have to give up to get him. Should be significant. So I'm not really sure about how anxious they are to move him.
Yeah. All right. So much to consider. Thanks, guys, for going through all those potential trade options. You both mentioned the prospects, so we're going to switch gears to that. The Mets have 4 players in Baseball Prospectus midseason top 50 list in Jonah Tong, Carson Benj, Nolan McLean, and Jet Williams. Keith, I'll come to you first. I don't know if you mentioned this already or if it was David, I can't remember, but should the Mets be willing to part ways with their top prospects for a win now player?
I believe so. I think you just coming off a draft the last few days, you've got a new influx of talent. I think I like where the Mets are as far as who they're bringing in at the draft. So you try to restock. And the 2 names that you mentioned that are big there, Jonah Tong, who was just the Futures game, and then Nolan McLean, who's been at AAA for the last few weeks. As the Mets have needed some starting pitching help at the major league level, everybody in the world is wondering, why aren't you bringing up a young player? Last year, they brought up Christian Scott 5 starts in. And the thing that I have not heard yet, and I'm not making a claim here, but one of the reasons why we're maybe not seeing these guys move up, and you can actually put now the hitters into that category too, is because if they are dominating a level and they're crushing it there, go look at their numbers. And all of a sudden you take those numbers to another team and say, look at how well Jet Williams is hitting at AA. Look at how well Nolan McLean's pitching at AAA. Their trade value is sky high when they are pitching and playing this well. So yes, I mean, I'm where the Mets are position player wise. They have so many infielders that we've already seen. They don't have enough room for them right now. Their outfield has Juan Soto in right field, Nimmo in left field for a long time. Starting pitching, again, if you don't go out and trade for new people, you can ship out guys like Tong and McLean and Sproat to bring in that exact need. So it's 1 for 1 there. So yeah, I mean, in a year like this, fire away. If that's what it takes with so many teams, at the marketplace, trying to make a deal, if that's what gets you over the edge, some good numbers, do it.
Okay. Keith's giving them the green light. David, what do you think? Should they part ways with their top prospects for a win now player?
Yeah, I mean, Keith made some really good points there. Obviously, you are always restocking the farm system. Nobody is guaranteed. You never know what can happen. I mentioned PCA earlier. Has he won in a million? No, but I mean, to see somebody blossom like that, the Mets certainly didn't think that was a couple administrations ago. So the Mets weren't so sure that was going to be the case. It's easy to fall in love with prospects. They get so much exposure now. Everything they do is highlighted. We know all their stats. You mentioned the top 4 there. I just saw 2 of them at the Futures game in Jonah Tong and Carson Benj. Tong, I really have to say is a pretty interesting kid. I can say, he's still pretty young. Huge, engaging personality. His inventive pitching style, looks like Tim Lincecum in his delivery. Has really made huge strides. If he came to New York, this kid would be a huge star. I think if the talent transferred as it did, he still has another level to go. So again, like I said, it's easy to really get enamored of these guys once you see them on a more regular basis. So it's tough to say, but David Stearns is far more clinical in that regard, and we'll look to see what he can get. And he has to make the evaluation. I mean, where do these guys' ceilings go? Like Keith said, when you're at a certain level in the minors, and these numbers, are looking amazing, you move them up, they may tend to flatten out a little. So I think they're in a good spot now with the way some of these guys are performing. Benj has done pretty well since he just got moved up. So I think they do have some value from other teams. Again, personally, after dealing with Tong, I hope he does make it to Queens at some point because it'd be great to have in the clubhouse. That aside, the Mets want to win a World Series this year, so I think they have to do what's necessary to make that happen.
I agree with both of you. Speaking of guys making strides, Ronnie Mauricio and Brett Beatty have both shown flashes as potential contributors for the Mets, but they also have both struggled with consistency. Keith, how are Mauricio and Beatty viewed within the Mets organization? Are they seen as long-term pieces to this team?
I think let's jump on Ronnie Mauricio first. We have only scraped the surface with Mauricio's ability at the major league level. Carlos Mendoza keeps using the word patience with him, even when he hits a ball 456 feet in Colorado in right center field, or balls off the wall in left field in Colorado. He will be the best of the prospect core that he came up with. Alvarez, Beatty, Vientos, Ronnie's the whole thing. So I think you have to keep him, no doubt. We've seen a lot of what Brett Beatty can do. We've seen a lot of him. I don't know if we've seen him at his best yet, but we're starting to see flashes of it. It takes guys longer than it takes others. Some guys are Pico Armstrong in year 2. Other guys are Brett Beatty in year 4 or 5 that you're going, okay, is he going to find that former top hitting prospect potential? So with Beatty, I think there's a lot of value to him still. He's been versatile in the infield, playing second base and third base. He's had clutch hits. There's no doubt, though, when you get past about 5 or 6 in the lineup for the Mets, there's a major fall off. You're hoping that one of the young players like Beatty and Mauricio has a big swing. I mean, Ronnie had a big double the other day in Kansas City to help tie the game late. Those are the kind of things that you want. Eventually, with more of those comes more consistency. And I think that the way the Mets have handled their young guys, not put a lot on their plate, which is sometimes annoying for fans to watch and say, I wish there were better players in these spots, but we've seen it at flashes. Now you just have to wait for that consistency to start to level out.
Yeah, for sure. David, how are Mauricio and Beatty viewed around the league? Do they have any trade value?
Oh, for sure. Definitely. I mean, these guys are people that have been asked about plenty of times in the past. I don't think they've really done any, certainly haven't done a ton to hurt their value. And I think, as Keith touched on, I mean, Beatty, he's had a rough go of it in New York. Just kind of the maturation process has been a little bit slower for him development-wise up here. I think if he went somewhere else, I think he'd really thrive. Not to say that he's crumbled under the pressure here, but there's been a lot of weight on his shoulders. The exposure here is real. The pressure here is real. And I think that has hurt him at times. I think he's moved a little bit beyond that. So I think that other teams certainly view him as a guy that'd be a contributor. Mauricio is the real deal, as Keith mentioned. I mean, one other thing I'll add to what Keith said, I mean, his arm is unreal. To add that to the package too, we've seen some of the throws he's made at third base, and the exit velocity, his ability to barrel up pitches is crazy too. So that he is a very high valued prospect. Again, a guy that can play other positions. So that there'll be plenty of interest in those guys that want somebody to make an impact at the major league level right away.
Yeah, it just seems like it comes down to consistency for that core. Let's look ahead a little bit, guys. Reinforcements are coming for the Mets in the second half. As I mentioned, Sean Manaea and Kodai Senga made their returns just before the All-Star break, while Jose Butto and Brooks Raley are set to return to the bullpen soon. But there are mounting concerns with Clay Holmes. Keith, you already mentioned it. Before the season, Holmes stated his goal was to throw 160 innings in 2025. He's already pitched 103. So, David, how do you think the Mets should manage Holmes the rest of the season?
You know, I was thinking about this the other day, and when it became a topic of conversation as we were watching the innings meter just click higher and higher and higher. How about this for a radical thought? I mean, what if you went out and got another top pitcher and then moved Clay Holmes into the bullpen? I mean, is that something that could be feasible? I mean, I don't know if he seems like a guy that would be amenable to do whatever he needed to do to win. But if you started to get concerned about, keeping him stretched out and wondering about the toll it might take with him, and if he hits a wall, they talked about that when they first signed him. If the starter experiment didn't work out, they would have another bullpen arm if he didn't adapt well to it. Clearly, he's adapted well to being a starting pitcher. He's been very effective at that. But we're not really sure where this is going to go or what the physical effects are going to be of these innings, continuing to climb. So if you're looking ahead in the second half and looking away to assemble that pitching staff and a rotation and a bullpen, I don't know. I haven't really talked to people about that. It's just something that I kind of thought of the other day. I'm sure other people have thought about it too. I mean, this is a guy that was an elite closer at one point. So depending what's available out there, traditionally bullpen arms obviously are easier to get than a top flight starter. But whatever you're willing to get up or whatever the market looks like, is that something they could consider if they're concerned about Clay Holmes' innings getting too high up from a starting basis? Again, it's not like he's not going to be used at all in relief. He'll get his innings in much shorter spurts, but I wonder if that would help space it out if they're worried about the physical toll with him moving forward.
No, yeah, I think that sounds like a viable option, especially to lengthen his season. Keith, what do you think?
Yeah, I plotted it out once I saw 103 and 160 was the goal. That's about a 5-inning start. You make 11 of those to get to that end goal. That would take you to the first week of the playoffs, which is a little frightening, right? I mean, that's a little faster to that innings total than we all thought. the thing about it is you don't want to get Clay Holmes to the playoffs and Holmes's gas tank is on E. I mean, that doesn't help anybody at all. I mean, he's been really good. He'll still give you 5 innings of 1-run ball or 2-run ball or nothing, but it's taken its toll little by little. He's a big guy. He's wearing it, but you could just tell in Kansas City that he wasn't getting a ton of swing and miss, wasn't dominating hitters. He was working a little bit harder, and I just wonder, I don't know what the right answer is. I mean, you put him on a 6-man rotation, you get him going once a week. If you throw him in the bullpen, I almost feel like you have to do that at the very end of the season when you concentrate all of it, because that's a different speed altogether than his body's been into for most of this year. But I mean, does it help you to go, oh, we'll give you 4 innings today and we'll sit you down for the rest of the week? That hurts the team in other ways. So it's dicey right now for Clay Holmes, because getting there at the end of the year last year, Severino was running out of gas and Manaea was running out of gas because they had done so much to get the Mets to that spot, that you want Holmes to be pitching close to peak or strong just down the stretch. And I don't know. It's a difficult task for the Mets. Maybe that Senga-esque 6-man rotation for him, but that's a hard to ask for the whole team right now.
No, it definitely is. And that's definitely something that we'll all be monitoring throughout the rest of the season. But like you said, Keith, you hope that he is at his best or still very strong once the playoffs are here. Let's switch gears one more time to some history that's going to be made this weekend. David Wright will be inducted into the Mets Hall of Fame this Saturday. Be sure to catch Wright's documentary, The Right Way, airing tonight at 6:30 p.m. on SNY. Keith, what's your favorite David Wright memory?
Well, it'll be Saturday for sure, just to finally get my generation up there in left field. I sit with Howie Rose every night, and we talk about Seaver, we talk about Kuzman, Keith, no doubt. But let's get David Wright's number up there. I think the World Series Game 3, the home run that he hit, the call from Joe Buck, I get chills as a broadcaster every time I hear that, just to see the captain have that game that he can win. He just flat out dominates that. And then if I were to slip in an honorable mention, that bare hand catch in San Diego was just cool, right? I mean, just cool. Not going to be on the highlight reel maybe for like the rest of the nation that remembers David Wright, but for us Mets fans to go, that was unbelievable.
Nuts. Oh my gosh. David, for you, how will Wright be remembered in New York sports history?
Yeah, I think that what makes Wright special among the numbers that are up there, and Keith touched on it, just for the generation that's finally going to have one of them up there. And that's the point I think it's important to touch on, like one of them. I mean, Wright was really a guy that kind of embodied the Mets fan base, right? Just a grinder, supremely talented, obviously an all-star, but really day in, day out, go to work, head up, face the music, deal with the heat. Just a grinding all-star, and one they just really kind of embraced from the jump, homegrown. So I think that's where the value is with that. Unfortunately, he didn't get his moment in the Canyon of Heroes and wasn't able to get that over the top, which does separate some of our heroes in New York from, just the very good. But Wright transcends that for just kind of the person he was on and off the field. The moments he provided, and as somebody who covered him from his debut to his final, farewell game at Citi Field, just a stand-up guy that the organization needed during some really dark times. I mean, there were some times that it was pretty tough to be a Mets fan, as Mets fans are very familiar with. And Wright was always there. He was kind of the beacon for the fan base. As dark as things got, they always had David Wright, and Wright was going to be at his locker every day, and he's going to tell you there are going to be better days ahead, and he's going to be there to try to put the team on his shoulders to do it. And I think people appreciated that, and I think that's why you're going to see that day on Saturday with his number retired.
Yeah, not only was he just an incredible player for the Mets, but he is also one of the nicest guys ever, and I'm sure we all can attest to that just in some of our conversations with him. I was able to meet him 2 summers ago, and he was just like a class act all around. So very happy for he and his family this weekend. That's going to do it for us here on Mets Off Day Live. Thank you so much for joining us, Keith and Dave. Another reminder, everyone, to watch The Right Way tonight at 6:30 on SNY. Always a pleasure, and we'll see you on the next Off Day.